During Christmas dinner at my son's house, as I was enjoying the warmth of the family celebration, an unknown number broke the silence. Go home immediately. The voice was tense, unfamiliar, but his anxiety infected me. Who was this? I asked, feeling the joy of the evening melt away. Hurry up! I dropped everything and left. When I arrived home, I couldn't believe my eyes. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The phone's shrill ring cut through the evening quiet like a blade through silk. I set down my tea mug, steam still curling from its rim, and reached for the handset with the eager anticipation of someone expecting good news. Christmas lights twinkled through the frost-covered window, casting red and green shadows across my worn leather armchair. Hello? My voice carried that particular brightness reserved for family calls during the holiday season. Dad! Amos's voice hit me like a slap of winter air. Cold, measured, wrong. Son, I was just thinking about Christmas dinner plans. Your mother's turkey recipe. I've decided we're spending Christmas just with our immediate family this year. Each word fell with deliberate precision. Without you. The fireplace crackled behind me, but suddenly the warmth couldn't reach my bones. My reading glasses slipped down my nose as I blinked, trying to process what I'd heard. But son, we always... What happened? Did I do something wrong? Nothing happened. His tone carried the finality of a judge's gavel. I just want a peaceful holiday. Violet supports this decision completely. My chest tightened. Violet, who always fussed over my comfort, who saved the wishbone for me every year, the same Violet who called me last month asking about Eleanor's stuffing recipe. Amos, please, help me understand. We've shared every Christmas since your mother... This conversation is over, Dad. I hope you understand. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like an angry wasp. I held the phone for several heartbeats, staring at it as if it might offer an explanation. My tea had grown cold in the forgotten mug, my hands trembling slightly as I finally placed the handset back in its cradle. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 8 times. Each note seemed to echo the finality in my son's voice. I remained motionless in my chair, watching the Christmas lights outside blur through sudden moisture in my eyes. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The fire had died down to glowing embers when I finally stood on unsteady legs and walked to the window. My reflection stared back from the dark glass, a 68-year-old man suddenly looking every one of his years. Behind my ghostly image, snow began to fall in thick, lazy flakes. I pressed my palm against the cold window, feeling the frost bite through my skin. The neighbors' houses glowed with warm yellow light. Families probably gathered around dinner tables, sharing stories and laughter. The Hendersons across the street had their tree visible through their front window, presents already wrapped and waiting beneath green branches. My breath fogged the glass as I whispered to my reflection, What did I do wrong, Eleanor? The silence that answered felt heavier than the snow accumulating outside. I traced a finger through the condensation on the window, drawing meaningless patterns, while my mind replayed every interaction with Amos over the past few months. Had I been too pushy about family traditions? Too insistent about keeping Eleanor's memory alive through our Christmas rituals? The kitchen light from the Peterson house next door flickered off, leaving only street lamps to illuminate the falling snow. I watched each flake dance in the amber light, remembering how Amos used to press his nose against this same window as a boy, counting snowflakes and begging me to read him stories about winter adventures. That little boy felt like a stranger now. My arthritis-stiffened fingers finally dropped from the cold glass, leaving only the faintest smudge where my hand had been. 2.5 hours had passed since I moved away from the window. The fire had died completely, leaving only cold ashes and the lingering scent of burned oak. Outside, the neighbors' lights had dimmed one by one until only scattered porch lamps remained, casting lonely pools of yellow across the snow-covered street. I wandered into the kitchen, muscle memory guiding me through the motions of preparing a late dinner I wouldn't eat. The microwave hummed as it heated leftover soup, but I barely heard it. My mind kept circling back to Amos's voice, searching for clues I might have missed. The phone book. I should call him back, apologize for whatever I'd done wrong. I pulled out the heavy yellow pages from the drawer beneath the counter, but something else tumbled out with it. Eleanor's old photo album, its leather cover cracked with age. My hands trembled as I opened it to the first page. There was 5-year-old Amos, gap-toothed grin stretching from ear to ear, clutching a wooden toy airplane under our Christmas tree. His pajamas were rumpled from sleep, his dark hair sticking up in impossible directions. The pure joy radiating from that little face made my chest ache. I turned the page carefully, the plastic protector crinkling under my fingers. Eleanor in our old kitchen, flour dusting her auburn hair like snow, laughing at something I'd said while rolling out sugar cookie dough. Her green dress, the one she wore every Christmas Eve, was spotted with ingredients, but her smile could have powered the entire neighborhood's holiday lights. "Eleanor, why did everything change so much?" I whispered to her frozen image. "When you were here, we were a real family." The next photo stopped my breathing entirely. The three of us together, Eleanor holding baby Amos against her chest, my younger self with an arm around both of them, all of us beaming at the camera. We looked invincible then, like nothing could ever break us apart. I traced Eleanor's face with my fingertip, remembering that Christmas morning 15 years ago. Amos thundering down the stairs in his Superman pajamas, Eleanor making her famous cinnamon rolls, while I pretended to be surprised by his excitement. He'd begged me to read The Night Before Christmas 3 times that day, snuggling against my shoulder with chocolate on his fingers and wonder in his eyes. When had that wonder died? When did my boy become this cold stranger who could cut me out of his life with surgical precision? I flipped through more pages, each photograph a small knife twisting deeper. Eleanor's final Christmas 5 years ago, when cancer had already weakened her hands, but she still insisted on wrapping every present herself. Amos had visited less frequently that year, making excuses about work and obligations I'd chosen to believe, rather than question. "Keep the family together, Truman," Eleanor had whispered during her last week, her once bright eyes clouded with morphine and worry. "Promise me you won't let distance grow between you and Amos." I'd promised. Had I failed her so completely? The microwave beeped insistently, but I ignored it. The soup could sit there all night. Nothing mattered except these frozen moments when we'd been whole. My fingers found the phone 3 separate times, dialing the first few digits of Amos's number before hanging up. What could I say? What words could bridge this chasm that had opened without warning? The grandfather clock chimed 11:30. I closed the album carefully, but pulled out the photo of Eleanor laughing in our kitchen. This one I placed on my nightstand where I could see her smile first thing in the morning. Maybe she'd help me understand what had gone so terribly wrong with our son. As I undressed for bed, Eleanor's side of the mattress looked vast and empty, the way it had for 5 long years. But tonight it felt even more hollow, as if losing Amos had doubled the loneliness that already lived in these rooms. I set my alarm clock for 8, old habits from 40 years of work refusing to die, and pulled the covers up to my chin. Through the bedroom window, snow continued falling steadily, blanketing our neighborhood in pristine white that would be gray slush by morning. The photo album went back in the drawer, but not before I whispered one final question to the darkness. "Where's that little boy who begged me to read him bedtime stories?" Morning light filtered through curtains that hadn't been properly opened, casting gray shadows across my rumpled breakfast table. The newspaper lay folded beside a bowl of oatmeal that had grown cold while I read the obituaries, a habit that felt more relevant with each passing year. Eleanor's photo smiled at me from the nightstand where I'd left it, but even her encouragement couldn't lift the weight that had settled in my chest. The phone's electronic ring made me jump, my spoon clattering against the ceramic bowl. After yesterday's conversation, any unexpected call felt like a potential ambush. I checked the caller ID with shaking fingers, and my heart stuttered when I saw Amos's name displayed in blue letters. Hope and dread wrestled in my stomach as I lifted the handset. "Hello?" My voice came out more cautious than I'd intended. "Dad." But this time, warmth crept around the edges of that single word. "I want to apologize for yesterday's call. I was completely wrong." Relief flooded through me so quickly I had to grip the table's edge. "Son! I'm so glad you called back. I was worried I'd done something." "No, Dad. You didn't do anything. I was stressed about work, taking it out on the wrong person." His voice carried that familiar cadence I remembered from childhood, when he'd apologize for breaking something or tracking mud through the house. Violet reminded me how important our family traditions are. We want you to come for Christmas dinner after all. Of course I'll come. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, joy bubbling up like champagne. Your mother's turkey recipe, and I'll bring the cranberry sauce That sounds perfect, Dad. Bring everything you usually make. He paused, and something in that silence made my elbow bump against my coffee mug. Violet's really looking forward to it. The kids have been asking about Grandpa Truman's stories. But underneath his enthusiasm, something felt rushed, practiced, like he was reading from a script rather than speaking from his heart. Amos, what made you change your mind so suddenly? Yesterday you seemed so certain. Just realized my mistake, that's all. His words came faster now, overlapping my question. Listen, I need to run. Work calls, you know how it is. We'll see you Christmas Day around noon? Wait, son, can we talk for just... Love you, Dad. See you soon. The line went dead before I could finish my sentence. I sat holding the phone, staring at it like it might provide answers to questions I couldn't quite formulate. For a moment, pure joy had coursed through my veins. Christmas was saved, my family restored, Eleanor's fears proven wrong. But now, in the silence that followed, doubt crept in like cold air through a cracked window. Something in Amos's voice hadn't sounded like my son. The words were right, the apology appropriate, but the delivery felt hollow, mechanical, like he was checking items off a list rather than mending a relationship. I stood up abruptly, pacing to the kitchen window where yesterday's snow had transformed the yard into a winter wonderland. The Peterson kids were already outside building a snowman, their laughter carrying across the still air. Normal families doing normal things on a normal December morning. Why didn't this feel normal? Maybe I'm overthinking this, I muttered to Eleanor's memory, turning back toward the living room. He apologized. He wants me there. Isn't that what matters? But as I moved through my morning routine, dishes in the sink, newspaper in the recycling bin, coffee mug rinsed and dried, that nagging feeling grew stronger. Amos had deflected every attempt at deeper conversation, rushing off the phone like he was afraid I might ask the wrong questions. What questions would be wrong? I picked up the phone again, dialing the first 3 digits of his number before stopping myself. What was I going to say? Son, your apology sounded fake? Why did you hang up so quickly? Can you prove you actually want me there? The question sounded paranoid, even in my own head. I set the phone down and walked toward the kitchen, mentally cataloging everything I'd need to prepare for Christmas dinner. The turkey would take hours. The cranberry sauce needed to be made fresh, and Eleanor's stuffing recipe required ingredients I didn't have in the house. But as I reached for my shopping list, my hand paused over the notepad. Something Amos had said echoed in my memory. Violet reminded me how important our family traditions are. Since when did Violet need to remind Amos about anything? He'd grown up with these traditions, lived them every year until his mother died. And why mention Violet's support so specifically? As if he needed her permission to invite his own father to Christmas dinner? I stared at the blank notepad, pen hovering over paper, while unease settled deeper in my bones. 3 days of purpose followed that confusing phone call. I woke December 22nd with energy I hadn't felt since Eleanor's passing, humming old Christmas carols while brewing my morning coffee. The notepad beside my cereal bowl filled quickly with menu plans and shopping lists, each item checked and double-checked. Turkey, cranberry sauce, Eleanor's stuffing, I muttered, tapping my pen against the worn kitchen table. Everything had to be perfect. This was my chance to prove that family traditions still mattered, that some bonds couldn't be broken by grief or time. The butcher shop on Maple Street buzzed with holiday shoppers, but I waited patiently in line, determined to find the perfect bird. When my turn came, I leaned across the glass counter with the intensity of a man on a mission. I need your finest turkey, I told the round-faced butcher, his white apron splattered with evidence of his craft. This is for a very special family reunion. His eyes brightened with understanding. Ah, bringing the family back together. I've got just the thing. The 22-pound turkey he presented looked like something from a magazine cover, plump, unblemished, with skin that would crisp to golden perfection. I paid without haggling, already imagining the moment I'd carry it into Amos's kitchen. December 23rd took me to the mall, where holiday crowds moved like schools of fish between brightly lit stores. The toy store overwhelmed me with choices until I spotted the model airplane kit, a vintage Cessna that reminded me of the wooden plane from that long ago photo. For Sarah, I selected an art set with colored pencils, arranged like a rainbow in their wooden box. That evening, I harvested herbs from my winter garden, their woody stems crackling between my fingers. Eleanor's marinade recipe, written in her careful script, lay propped against the sugar bowl while I minced garlic and stripped rosemary leaves. Eleanor, I hope I remember this correctly, I whispered to her photo on the windowsill. This has to be perfect. The marinade came together like a fragrant green paste. Garlic, rosemary, thyme, olive oil, and Eleanor's secret ingredient, a splash of white wine. I massaged it under the turkey's skin with careful fingers, feeling like I was performing some ancient ritual of reconciliation. Christmas Eve morning arrived gray and cold, but my spirits remained high. I wrapped gifts with military precision, folding corners sharp as knife blades, and tying ribbons with careful bows. My best Christmas shirt hung pressed and ready, cologne dabbed behind my ears like armor for battle. Yet as evening approached, unease crept in like fog through cracks. Amos hadn't called to confirm details. What time should I arrive? Should I bring wine? Did the children have food allergies I'd forgotten? My phone remained stubbornly silent, despite my frequent glances. Frank Larson appeared at my kitchen window while I cleaned up marinade bowls, his weathered face creased with curiosity. "Big plans tomorrow, Truman?" he called through the glass. "Christmas dinner with Amos and his family," I replied, perhaps too quickly. "We're going to be a real family again." Something flickered across Frank's expression, but he only nodded. "That's wonderful. You deserve happiness." After he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that his question had carried weight beyond casual neighborly interest. But I pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the golden turkey resting in my refrigerator and the carefully wrapped gifts waiting by the door. By bedtime, Christmas Eve, everything was ready. Everything except my racing heart, which seemed determined to find problems where none existed. Why hadn't Amos called? Why did Frank look concerned? Why did this reunion feel more like a performance than a homecoming? I stared at the ceiling until dawn, telling myself that anticipation always brought anxiety. Tomorrow would be perfect. It had to be. Christmas morning dawned crisp and bright, snow sparkling like scattered diamonds across the neighborhood. I dressed with ceremonial care, straightening my tie in the hallway mirror and smoothing down hair that stubbornly refused to cooperate. The turkey carrier felt heavier than expected as I loaded it into my car alongside the gift bags. I paused at my front door, key hovering over the lock, and looked back at my house. Empty rooms stared back through frost-covered windows, waiting for my return. Something cold touched my spine, but I shook it off and turned toward the car. Today was about family. Today was about healing. Amos's driveway crunched under my tires, ice crystals glittering in the afternoon sun. Christmas lights outlined every window and door frame, creating a postcard-perfect scene that made my chest tight with hope. I maneuvered the turkey carrier and gift bags from my car, cold air biting my cheeks as I approached the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open to reveal Violet's warm smile, flour dusting her red sweater like confectioner's snow. "Truman, we're so glad you're here. Come in before you freeze." The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, holiday music drifting from hidden speakers, while Christmas lights cast rainbow shadows across polished hardwood floors. Timmy appeared at my elbow like magic, bouncing on his toes with barely contained excitement. "Grandpa Truman, did you bring presents? Can we open them now? Mom said we had to wait, but—" "Let your grandfather get settled first," Violet laughed, taking the heavy turkey carrier from my numb hands. "This thing weighs a ton. What did you do to it?" "Eleanor's secret marinade," I said, unwinding my scarf while Sarah peeked shyly around the corner. 24 hours of garlic, rosemary, and patience." Martha Harrington emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel covered in dancing reindeer. Her eyes widened when she saw the turkey carrier. "This turkey is absolutely magnificent. You must share Eleanor's secret." I've been making the same boring bird for 30 years. The secret is time, I told her, accepting Walter's firm handshake and his gruff nod of approval. Eleanor always said good things can't be rushed. Amos appeared last, straightening his tie with movements that seemed too precise, too controlled. His smile reached his mouth, but stopped somewhere short of his eyes. Thanks for coming, Dad. This means everything to us. Something in his tone made me study his face more carefully, but Timmy grabbed my hand and dragged me toward the dining room before I could analyze what I'd heard. The table gleamed under soft candlelight, places set with Violet's good china, and cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. My turkey took center stage, golden skin glistening under the chandelier like it had been brushed with liquid amber. Would you carve, Truman? Violet asked, offering me the electric knife. You're the artist here. I carved with steady hands, each slice revealing meat so tender it practically fell from the bone. The marinade had worked its magic, herbs creating a fragrant crust that drew appreciative murmurs from around the table. Conversation flowed like wine during dinner. Walter asked about my retirement projects, while Martha praised every dish I'd contributed. The children chattered about school and friends, their voices bright with holiday excitement. Even Amos seemed to relax, sharing stories about work that sounded almost natural. But I noticed things, the way he checked his watch when he thought no one was looking, how he startled slightly when someone's phone buzzed with notifications. His laughter carried the right notes, but something underneath felt hollow, like an echo in an empty room. Grandpa, can we open presents now? Sarah asked, her voice soft but hopeful as she finished her cranberry sauce. Please, 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 Timmy added, bouncing in his chair until Violet placed a calming hand on his shoulder. The gift exchange happened in the living room, wrapping papers scattered like colorful snow across the carpet. Timmy's eyes grew wide as he unwrapped the model airplane, turning the box over to examine every detail. A Cessna! Just like the ones at the air show. Can we build it together? Of course, I promised, warmth spreading through my chest. That's what grandfathers are for. Sarah hugged her art set close, already planning masterpieces with colored pencils that gleamed like jewels in their wooden case. I'm going to draw our whole family, she announced solemnly, even great-grandma Eleanor, so she can be with us too. The room fell quiet for a moment, Eleanor's absence suddenly present among us like an extra guest. But it wasn't the sharp grief I'd carried for 5 years. This felt gentler, like she was smiling down at us from wherever such smiles come from. She would have loved that, I said, my voice rougher than intended. As evening approached, the meal's warmth settled over us like a comfortable blanket. Walter and I discussed baseball, while Martha helped Violet with dishes. The children played on the floor with their new treasures, their giggles providing a cheerful soundtrack to adult conversation. I loosened my tie and leaned back in the armchair Violet had designated as mine, feeling more content than I had in months. This was what Christmas should be: family together, traditions honored, love shared across generations. My phone vibrated against my chest, a gentle buzzing through my jacket pocket. I ignored it, not wanting to break the spell of this perfect evening, but it buzzed again, insistent as a trap bee. Excuse me for just a moment, I said to Walter, who'd been describing his grandson's baseball prowess. I slipped away from Walter's baseball stories, my phone still buzzing insistently against my ribs. The narrow powder room off the main hallway offered privacy, its door clicking shut behind me to muffle the warm sounds of family conversation. Unknown number glowed on my phone's display. I almost declined. Who calls on Christmas night except telemarketers and scam artists? But when it stopped ringing and immediately started again, irritation overrode caution. Hello? Who is this calling on Christmas? You need to get home immediately. The voice cut through pleasantries like a blade through wrapping paper. Urgent, male, unfamiliar. I blinked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, watching my expression shift from annoyance to confusion. Who is this? What are you talking about? That doesn't matter right now. Just go home. My grip tightened on the phone. Behind the bathroom door, I could hear Timmy explaining airplane parts to his grandmother, normal Christmas evening sounds that suddenly felt very far away. I don't understand what you're saying. What's happening? Trust me, and go now. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone like it might explain itself. My reflection in the mirror looked older somehow, worry lines etched deeper around my eyes. The stranger's voice had carried conviction, not the rehearsed quality of a scam call, but genuine urgency that made my chest tighten. What could be wrong at home? Fire? Break-in? Had I left something dangerous running? My mind raced through possibilities while my heart picked up speed to match. But this was Christmas dinner, my first real family gathering in 5 years. How could I leave based on some cryptic warning from a stranger? Violet would worry, the children would be confused, and Amos might think I was making excuses to escape. The phone felt heavy in my hands as I wrestled with indecision. Logic said it was probably nothing. A wrong number, a prank. Maybe someone with information that wasn't as urgent as they claimed. But something in the caller's tone had cut through my rational defenses. I checked the number again, completely unfamiliar. No voicemail, no follow-up text. Just that stark command to go home immediately. Through the bathroom door, I heard Amos laugh at something Walter said, the sound sharp and too bright. Had he noticed my absence yet? Was he checking his own watch, wondering why his father was taking so long? My reflection stared back with worried eyes. Christmas lights from the hallway casting red and green shadows across my face. The stranger's voice echoed in my memory. Trust me, and go now. Trust whom? Why? What possible emergency could require such urgency that a stranger would track down my phone number on Christmas night? But even as logical questions multiplied, my body was already responding to primitive alarm signals. My shoulders had tensed, my breathing grown shallow. Some ancient part of my brain was screaming that this call wasn't random, wasn't meaningless. I thought of my house sitting empty in the December darkness, windows unlit, doors locked against whatever might be waiting. What if someone was inside right now, going through my belongings? What if the house was flooding or burning or... Dad, you okay in there? Amos's voice came through the door, concerned and perfectly timed. Just a minute, I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. I took one deep breath, watching my reflection steel itself for whatever came next. The stranger's urgency had infected me like a virus. I couldn't ignore it, couldn't explain it away, couldn't pretend that Christmas dinner was more important than this growing certainty that something was very wrong at home. My hand reached for the doorknob, fingers trembling slightly as they closed around cold brass. Whatever explanation I gave the family would have to be good enough. Whatever was happening at my house couldn't wait for dessert and coffee. My hand trembled as I turned the bathroom doorknob, the stranger's urgent voice still echoing in my skull. The warm family scene beyond the door felt suddenly foreign. Children's laughter, adults chatting over coffee, the soft glow of Christmas lights that had seemed so welcoming an hour ago. Everything okay, Dad? Amos looked up from his conversation with Walter, something flickering behind his eyes that might have been concern or calculation. I need to go home. The words came out sharper than intended, cutting through the comfortable evening atmosphere like a blade through wrapping paper. Violet appeared at my elbow, dish towel still in her hands. Home? But we haven't had dessert yet. I made your favorite apple pie. There's an emergency. I grabbed my coat from the closet, movements jerky and urgent. Someone called. Something's wrong at the house. The room fell quiet, except for Timmy's model airplane making whooshing sounds as he flew it between the furniture. Sarah looked up from her new art supplies, colored pencils scattered across the coffee table like rainbow sprinkles. What kind of emergency? Walter's brow furrowed with the suspicion of a man who'd lived long enough to question convenient coincidences. I don't know yet. My fingers fumbled with coat buttons, muscle memory failing under stress. They just said I needed to get home immediately. Amos stood up, his face the picture of concerned confusion. Who called? Why didn't they explain what was wrong? For a split second I studied my son's expression, searching for something I couldn't name. His worry looked genuine, but there was something underneath, a tension that didn't quite match his words. I have to go. I bent to kiss the children goodbye, their small faces looking up at me with innocent bewilderment. Thank you for a wonderful Christmas dinner. I'm sorry to leave like this. The cold December air hit my face like a slap as I hurried to my car, family voices following me through the open door. My engine turned over reluctantly, protesting the sudden demand for action after sitting in the cold. I backed out too quickly, nearly clipping Amos's mailbox with my bumper. In the rearview mirror, I saw them clustered in the doorway, Violet hugging herself against the cold, Walter shaking his head, the children pressing their faces to the window. Amos stood slightly apart from the group, his silhouette dark against the warm light spilling from inside. The suburban streets stretched empty before me, Christmas lights twinkling from house after house like distant stars. Most families were inside celebrating, creating the warm tableau I glimpsed through uncurtained windows. The radio played Silent Night, but nothing about this night felt silent or holy. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, that mysterious voice replaying in my memory with each mile. Trust me and go now. But trust whom and why? What could possibly be wrong at home that required such urgency? The speedometer crept past the limit as empty intersections blurred by. I ran a yellow light, then another, driven by some primitive instinct that screamed danger even when logic found no evidence. Had I left something running? The stove, maybe, or a space heater that could start a fire. But I'd been so careful preparing for today, double-checking everything before leaving. The house had been pristine, secure, ready for my return, unless someone else had entered it. That thought hit like ice water in my veins, making my foot press harder on the accelerator. A break-in. It had to be. Someone had seen the house dark and empty on Christmas night, easy pickings while the owner was away celebrating with family. But how would a stranger get my phone number? How would they know I wasn't home? My mind circled back to Amos's behavior during dinner, the way he'd checked his watch, that forced laughter, the relief I'd seen flicker across his face when I announced my departure. Was I imagining connections that didn't exist, or had my son seemed almost eager for me to leave? The thought felt disloyal, unworthy of a father who should trust his child. But suspicion had taken root, growing stronger with each passing mile. I turned into my neighborhood, noting how few houses showed signs of life. Christmas night in suburbia meant families gathered inside, curtains drawn against the cold. Perfect conditions for crime. My house sat dark at the end of the street, exactly as I'd left it hours ago. But something felt wrong, a subtle wrongness that made my skin crawl, even before I could identify what had changed. I parked behind Frank Larson's oak tree instead of my own driveway, some instinct demanding stealth over convenience. The engine ticked as it cooled, the only sound in the crystalline night air. Cold air bit my face as I stepped from the car, every sense suddenly hyper-aware of my surroundings. The familiar street looked different through the lens of potential danger. Shadows deeper, ordinary objects transformed into potential hiding places or weapons. My house crouched dark against the star-filled sky, but something was wrong with its silhouette. A basement window, one that should have reflected streetlight, showed only black emptiness. Broken glass glittered on the snow below like scattered diamonds. Someone was inside, right now. I fumbled for my phone with numb fingers, dialing 911 while crouching behind Frank's fence for cover. A flashlight beam swept across my upstairs bedroom window, methodical and deliberate. Whoever was in there wasn't panicking. They were searching. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone in my house, I whispered, watching the light disappear and reappear in different windows. I can see them moving around inside with a flashlight. Sir, what's your address? Are you in a safe location? I rattled off the street number, eyes never leaving the moving beam of light. I'm outside. They broke in through the basement window. Officers are on their way. Please stay away from the house until they arrive. Stay away? While some criminal ransacked everything Eleanor and I had built together? While they pawed through our memories, our private papers, our life's work? How long until police get here? Approximately 10 to 15 minutes, sir. Please remain at a safe distance. 15 minutes. A lifetime for a thief to grab everything valuable and disappear into the night. I hung up and popped my car trunk, hands shaking as I searched through emergency supplies and forgotten tools. My fingers closed around cold metal, a tire iron left over from changing a flat last spring. The weight felt solid, reassuring. Whoever was violating my home would find more resistance than they'd bargained for. I crept around the house's perimeter, using Christmas decorations and snow-laden bushes for cover. The broken basement window told the story, jagged glass teeth pointing inward, snow scattered on the basement floor where the intruder had climbed through. The flashlight beam moved systematically through my bedroom, pausing at the dresser where Eleanor's jewelry box sat, then moving to the closet where I kept important papers. This wasn't random vandalism or drug-fueled desperation. Someone was looking for specific things. My hands tightened on the tire iron as protective rage flooded my system. This was my house, my sanctuary, my life with Eleanor that some criminal thought they could just steal like it meant nothing. I positioned myself in the shadows beside the broken window, ears straining for sounds from inside. Footsteps creaked overhead, someone moving with purpose through rooms that held 40 years of memories. The beam of light swept back and forth like a lighthouse, searching, always searching. What were they looking for? Cash? Jewelry? Electronics? Or something more specific? More personal? The footsteps moved toward the stairs, descending toward the basement. Toward me. My breath came in short puffs that steamed in the frigid air. Every muscle coiled with tension as I pressed against the house's foundation, tire iron raised and ready. Whoever emerged from that window would find themselves face to face with a very angry homeowner who'd had enough of being victimized. The basement light flicked on briefly, then off again, cautious. Smart, but not smart enough to expect me waiting in the shadows. Papers rustled inside, documents being shuffled, examined, selected. The sound made my stomach clench with violation. Those were private papers, personal records, pieces of the life Eleanor and I had built together. How dare some stranger put their dirty hands on our private business? A chair scraped across the basement floor. Drawers opened and closed with soft thuds. The methodical searching continued, unhurried despite the risk of discovery. Whoever was inside felt safe, confident they had time to find what they wanted. They were wrong. The flashlight beam approached the broken window, casting long shadows across the snow-covered yard. I pressed tighter against the house's brick wall, tire iron trembling in my grip from cold and adrenaline. A bag appeared first, dark canvas stuffed with papers and small objects. Then a leg, carefully testing the window frame for sharp glass before committing to the exit. I held my breath, every muscle coiled for action. One more second, just one more second, and I'd have my answers about who thought they could steal from Truman Dixon on Christmas night. The second leg emerged from the basement window, followed by a torso I recognized with sickening clarity. Alton Reed straightened up in my backyard, clutching a canvas bag stuffed with what looked like documents and small valuables, completely unaware that he wasn't alone. "Alton?" I stepped from the shadows, tire iron raised, my voice cutting through the winter silence like a whip crack. He spun around, nearly losing his balance on the snow-slick ground. The bag tumbled from his startled grip, papers scattering across the white landscape like oversized confetti. His face went ghost pale in the dim light from neighboring houses. "Truman, I didn't want to." This wasn't my idea. Whose idea was it then? I moved closer, the tire iron feeling heavy and righteous in my hands. Papers lay scattered around his feet, documents I recognized even in the darkness. Eleanor's will, bank statements, stock certificates. Alton raised his hands, backing against the house's foundation with nowhere to run. "He said you'd be at dinner for hours. He said you'd never know." Who said that? But even as I asked, cold understanding was already crystallizing in my chest, like ice forming around my heart. "Amos knew you'd be at dinner for hours." The words tumbled out in a panicked rush. "He planned this whole Christmas reunion so I could—" The tire iron slipped from my suddenly nerveless fingers, hitting the snow with a muffled thud. "My son sent you?" Alton nodded miserably, tears streaming down his face in the cold air. "He needed Eleanor's will, the Boeing stock certificates. He said you were going to give millions to charity instead of family." Each word hit like a physical blow. I staggered backward, staring at the papers scattered in the snow. Eleanor's careful handwriting on legal documents, stock certificates worth more money than most people saw in a lifetime. Our life savings reduced to theft targets. The Christmas dinner, my voice came out as a hoarse whisper. The apology, the invitation, it was all fake? "He's desperate, Truman." Alton scrambled to his knees, trying to gather the scattered documents with shaking hands. "Gambling debts, bad investments. He owes people who don't forgive late payments. My legs felt unsteady as the full scope of the betrayal sank in. Amos had looked me in the eye across that dinner table, had accepted my turkey and gifts, had let his children climb on my lap, all while knowing his friend was ransacking my home. How much does he owe? Close to 200,000. Alton's voice was barely audible. He found out about the Boeing stock from Eleanor's estate papers. Said it was family money anyway, that you'd understand eventually. Family money. Eleanor's legacy, carefully preserved and invested over decades, reduced to gambling debt repayment. The stocks she'd bought with her teacher's salary, penny by penny, dollar by dollar, trusting that her husband would use them wisely. I picked up one of the scattered certificates, Eleanor's name printed in careful script at the top. $2.3 million in Boeing stock, purchased over 30 years of marriage when the company was struggling and shares were cheap. Her nest egg for our retirement, her security blanket against an uncertain future. He was going to steal my wife's life savings to pay gambling debts. Alton nodded, no longer trying to collect the papers. He said you'd never miss it. That old people don't need that much money anyway. The casual cruelty of it, dismissing 68 years of life as irrelevant, reducing Eleanor's memory to a target for theft, made something inside me crack like ice on a frozen pond. I stared at Alton, then at the papers scattered in the snow, then back at the broken basement window that gaped like a wound in my home's foundation. Everything I'd believed about my son, about our relationship, about the possibility of healing old hurts, all of it lies built on greed and desperation. My phone began to ring, the electronic sound jarring in the winter silence. I looked at the screen. Amos calling. He's probably wondering why you left dinner early, Alton said miserably. He's going to be so angry that I got caught. I stared at my son's name on the phone screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Behind me, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. In front of me, scattered in the snow, lay the wreckage of Eleanor's trust and my faith in family. The phone kept ringing, insistent as guilt, demanding as greed. Police sirens wailed closer through the winter night, red and blue lights beginning to strobe through the bare tree branches like some twisted Christmas display. I stood over Alton, who remained crumpled in the snow beside my scattered documents, his confession still echoing in the frigid air. 2 patrol cars rounded the corner, their headlights sweeping across my yard and illuminating the broken basement window, like evidence in a crime scene photo. Officers emerged with practiced efficiency, hands resting on equipment belts, eyes quickly assessing the situation before them. "Sir, are you the homeowner who called 911? The lead officer approached me with calm authority, his badge catching the reflection of Christmas lights from neighboring houses. "Truman Dixon, this is my house, and that man broke into it." I gestured toward Alton, who raised his hands higher, as if surrendering to an army rather than 2 suburban police officers. The second officer knelt beside Alton, beginning the familiar ritual of rights and handcuffs, while his partner focused on me. "What was stolen, Mr. Dixon?" I gathered Eleanor's will from the wet snow, its edges darkened with moisture, but the text still legible. He took financial documents. My late wife's will, Boeing stock certificates worth over $2 million, banking information. $2 million? The officer's eyebrows rose as he examined the waterlogged papers. That's grand larceny territory. Frank Larson appeared from his house, bathrobe belted over pajamas, slippers crunching through snow as he approached our unusual gathering. His weathered face showed relief, mixed with concern as he took in the scene. "Frank, you're the one who called me?" I asked, pieces finally clicking together. "Saw someone with a flashlight moving through your house around 9, he said, nodding toward the officers. "Couldn't just ignore that on Christmas night. Had to track down your phone number from the neighborhood directory." "You saved more than just my possessions tonight." I clasped his shoulder, grateful for neighbors who still cared enough to get involved. The lead officer looked between us with growing understanding. So this wasn't a random break-in. Mr. Reed here knew the house would be empty? "He's my son's friend," I said, the words tasting bitter. "My son knew I'd be at his house for Christmas dinner. He planned this whole thing." Alton, now handcuffed and seated in the patrol car's back seat, stared through the window with the expression of someone watching his entire future collapse. The officer taking his statement nodded grimly as details emerged. The gambling debts, the planned theft, the manipulation of family Christmas traditions. My phone rang again, the electronic sound jarring against the official atmosphere of crime scene investigation. Amos, displayed on the screen like an accusation. Should I answer that? I asked the officer. Go ahead. Might be interesting to hear what he says. I accepted the call, putting it on speaker so the officers could hear. Hello, Amos? Dad, where are you? We're all getting worried. His voice carried exactly the right mix of concern and confusion. You've been gone for over an hour. I'm coming back, son. We need to have a conversation. Silence stretched across the connection, and I could almost hear Amos's mind racing to interpret my tone. Is everything all right? You sound different. Everything will be clear very soon. I ended the call before he could ask more questions. The officers finished their paperwork while I collected the scattered documents, each piece of paper representing a fragment of Eleanor's legacy that had nearly been stolen by our own son. The Boeing stock certificates felt heavier in my hands than their physical weight suggested. 30 years of Eleanor's careful investment, saved penny by penny from her teacher's salary. We'll need you to come in tomorrow to finalize your statement, the lead officer said, handing me his card. Mr. Reed will be charged with breaking and entering, attempted grand larceny, and probably a few other things once we sort through everything. Frank walked with me to my car as the patrol vehicles drove away, Elton's pale face visible through the rear window like a ghost of Christmas future. You sure you're okay to drive back there? Frank asked. That's going to be a tough conversation. I looked at my house one final time. The broken window, the disturbed snow, the Christmas wreath on my front door that suddenly seemed to mock the whole notion of peace on earth. Some conversations can't wait, Frank. Some truths need to be told while they're fresh. My car started reluctantly in the cold, engine protesting the sudden demand for action. As I backed out of my driveway, my headlights swept across the Christmas decorations on my front door, their cheerful red bow a bitter contrast to the family destruction I was about to unleash. But Eleanor's will sat safely beside me on the passenger seat, rescued from theft and betrayal. Whatever happened next, her legacy would be protected. My headlights swept across Amos's house as I pulled into the driveway, the warm glow from the windows and twinkling Christmas lights creating a perfect facade of family happiness. Through the front window, I could see silhouettes moving in the living room, my son pacing near the Christmas tree while Violet gestured with obvious concern. The recovered documents lay on my passenger seat, like evidence in a court case. Eleanor's will, slightly damp but perfectly legible. The Boeing stock certificates bearing her careful signature from decades past. I gathered them carefully, each paper a weapon in the battle for truth I was about to wage. I didn't knock. This was still family, even if that word had been poisoned by greed and betrayal. The front door opened onto a scene of worried domesticity. Violet folding dish towels by the kitchen entrance, Walter reading a magazine while Martha worked on a crossword puzzle. The children sprawled on the carpet with their new Christmas toys. Everyone looked up as I entered, and I watched Amos's face transform from relief to confusion to growing alarm as he noticed my expression. Truman, thank goodness! Violet hurried toward me, genuine concern creasing her features. What happened? You look terrible. Ask your husband what happened, Violet. I placed the documents on the coffee table with deliberate ceremony, arranging them so everyone could see Eleanor's familiar handwriting on the will, the official Boeing letterhead on the stock certificates, the bank routing numbers on financial statements. Amos stared at the papers like they were evidence of his own execution. Dad, I don't understand what you're talking about. These are Eleanor's will and the Boeing stock certificates that Alton tried to steal tonight. I kept my voice level, letting the facts speak for themselves. He's currently in police custody, charged with breaking and entering an attempted grand larceny. Walter's magazine slipped from his hands. Stock certificates? What stocks? Eleanor left me Boeing shares worth $2.3 million. I watched each face process this information. Surprise, confusion, growing understanding. She bought them over 30 years, investing her teacher's salary when the company was struggling. Amos discovered that I planned to donate the inheritance to veterans organizations and educational charities. Dad, that's our family inheritance. Amos's carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing the desperation underneath. You can't just give it all away to strangers? I can do whatever I choose with my money, but you decided to steal it instead of talking to me. Violet sank onto the couch, one hand covering her mouth as pieces clicked into place. The Christmas invitation, the sudden reconciliation, all planned to give Amos an alibi while his friend robbed my house. I turned to face my son directly. You used Christmas, used your children's joy, your wife's goodness, used my grief for your mother to cover theft. Martha's crossword puzzle fell to the floor, forgotten. Amos, please tell us this isn't true. But Amos was past denying. The evidence lay scattered across the coffee table, and his friend's arrest had removed any possibility of covering up the conspiracy. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the debts, the people I owe money to. How much? Walter's voice carried the authority of a man who'd managed finances his entire life. $200,000. Amos's admission fell into the room like a bomb. Bad investments, some gambling. It started small, but it grew so fast. So you decided to steal from your father? Violet's voice broke on the words. To use our children as props in a criminal scheme? Timmy looked up from his model airplane, sensing adult tensions he couldn't understand. Why is everyone yelling? Sarah clutched her new art supplies closer, colored pencils scattered across the carpet, like rainbow fragments of the family that was shattering around her. Your father made some very bad choices, I said gently to the children, then looked back at Amos. Choices that hurt people who trusted him. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Amos was fully breaking down now, years of careful deception collapsing under the weight of exposure. I just needed time to fix things, to pay back what I owed. By stealing from your father on Christmas night? Walter stood up, his usual quiet demeanor replaced by moral outrage. By lying to your wife, using your children as alibis? Violet was crying now, not the gentle tears of holiday sentiment, but the harsh sobs of someone watching their entire life dissolve. How long have you been lying to me? About money, about work, about everything? Martha gathered the confused children closer, shielding them from the adult devastation playing out across their Christmas celebration. I looked around the room, at Violet's tears, at the grandparents' shock, at children who didn't understand why their Christmas joy had turned to chaos, at my son collapsed in guilt and desperation. This family was destroyed, carved apart by greed as efficiently as any blade. The Boeing shares will go to veterans programs and education funds, just as Eleanor would have wanted. I gathered the documents from the coffee table, preparing to leave this wreckage behind. She believed in helping others, in building something meaningful. You turned her legacy into a target for theft. I stood to leave, pausing at the doorway to look back at the destroyed Christmas scene. Violet was still crying. Walter was comforting Martha. The children sat confused and frightened among their scattered toys, and Amos remained slumped in his chair with his head in his hands. Violet, you and the children are always welcome in my home. You're innocent in this. I stepped out into the cold December night, leaving behind the warm lights and the wreckage of what had once been my family. Morning light filtered through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the table where Eleanor's rescued documents lay neatly arranged beside her photograph. Coffee steamed in my favorite mug, the one she'd given me 20 years ago with "World's Best Husband" printed in fading letters, while I read through the stock certificates with fresh perspective. The Boeing shares represented more than money. Each purchase date told a story. September 1995, when the company struggled with layoffs and Eleanor saw opportunity. March 2001, after 9/11 devastated airline stocks and she believed in recovery. December 2008, during the financial crisis when others sold in panic and she bought with faith. My phone rang, interrupting the peaceful morning routine. Violet's name on the caller ID made my chest tighten with concern. Truman, I'm so sorry. Her voice was hoarse from crying, but determined. I never knew about Amos's plans, about any of it. Violet, none of this is your fault. You're a good woman who trusted the wrong man. I'm filing for divorce. The words came out in a rush, as if saying them quickly might make them easier. The children don't deserve a criminal father, and I won't live with someone who could do what he did. You're welcome in my life always, you and the children. Thank you. That means everything right now. After she hung up, I sat staring at Eleanor's photo, remembering our conversations about family, about values, about what really mattered. She would have been heartbroken by Amos's choices, but proud of the truth finally emerging. A knock at the front door interrupted my reflection. Frank Larson stood on my porch, concern creasing his weathered features. "How are you holding up, friend?" "It hurts, Frank, but I'm free from lies now." I gestured him inside, grateful for solid friendship in the aftermath of family destruction. "You did the right thing. Truth always matters, even when it's painful." Eleanor would be proud that justice won over family loyalty. I poured him coffee, settling into the comfortable rhythm of honest conversation. We talked about practical matters, changing locks, updating security systems, revising my will to ensure Amos could never access the inheritance. Frank's police experience proved invaluable for protecting against future schemes. "What will you do with Eleanor's shares?" he asked, examining the Boeing certificates. "Honor her memory. Veterans organizations, educational scholarships, community programs, things that build people up instead of tearing them down." Frank nodded approvingly. "She'd like that." After he left, I called my attorney to schedule a will revision appointment, then contacted the bank about adding additional security to my safe deposit box. Eleanor's legacy would be protected from greed, used for the charitable purposes she would have supported. The house felt different now, not lonely but peaceful. The deception was gone, the pretense lifted. I was 68 years old, with friends who cared about truth, a daughter-in-law who valued integrity, grandchildren who deserved better role models. My phone buzzed with a text from Violet. "The kids want to know when they can visit Grandpa Truman again." I smiled, typing back, "Anytime. We'll build new traditions." Looking at Eleanor's photograph on the mantel, I felt her presence guiding my decisions. The money she'd saved would help veterans find jobs, fund scholarships for teachers like herself, support community programs that strengthen families instead of destroying them. "Your Boeing shares will help people build better lives," I said to her image, "just like you would have wanted." Amos had chosen greed over family, lies over love, theft over trust. I chose honor over blood, truth over convenience, integrity over comfort. The December morning sun streamed through my windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny prayers in the golden light. Outside, snow covered the neighborhood in pristine white, offering the promise of fresh starts and new beginnings. I opened my front door to breathe the crisp winter air, looking out at the peaceful street where Frank had stood guard like a sentinel of justice. The future stretched ahead, smaller than I'd planned, but cleaner, more honest, built on foundations that wouldn't crumble under pressure. Eleanor's legacy was safe. Truth had won over deception. Real family, the kind built on love and respect rather than blood and obligation, would continue. That was enough. That was everything. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.